A couple of bikers pick on the wrong female Navy commander. The dusty highway stretched endlessly under the burning Arizona sun, shimmering waves of heat rising from the asphalt. A small roadside bar, the Rusty Wheel, stood alone near a gas station, the kind of place where rough men nursed cheap beers and shared stories of the road. Inside, a group of leather-clad bikers had gathered, their laughter echoing through the dimly lit room. They were members of the Hellhounds, a notorious biker gang known for their unruly behavior and short tempers. As the front door creaked open, the bar fell momentarily silent. A woman stepped in, her posture straight, her movements precise. She wasn't dressed like a local or a trucker passing through, no cowboy boots or plaid shirts. Instead, she wore a fitted black t-shirt tucked into dark cargo pants, her short auburn hair neatly pulled back. A sharp gaze swept the room, sizing everyone up in an instant. She walked toward the bar with purpose. Whiskey. Neat. Her voice was calm, controlled. The bartender hesitated for a second before pouring her a glass. That brief hesitation was enough for the bikers to take notice. A particularly large man with a grizzled beard and tattoos covering his arms nudged his buddy. Well, what do we have here? He muttered loud enough for her to hear. His friend, a wiry man with a scar across his cheek, chuckled. A lady wandering into the wrong bar, looks like. The woman ignored them, lifting her glass and taking a slow sip. Another biker, a bald brute with a chain hanging from his belt, scoffed. Ain't safe for a girl like you to be drinking alone in a place like this. He smirked. Need some company? The woman set her glass down and finally turned to them. Her piercing blue eyes held no fear, only mild amusement. I'm fine. The big man with the beard leaned in, resting a hand on the counter beside her. Oh, I wasn't a skin, sweetheart. Her jaw tightened slightly. I suggest you move that hand before something bad happens. Laughter erupted around the bar. Oh ho, you hear that, boys? The bald man jeered. Little lady thinks she's tough. The bearded man grinned, showing yellowed teeth. How about you and me take this outside, sweetheart? We'll see just how tough you really are. She exhaled slowly, as if bored. Then, she reached into her back pocket and pulled out something small and metallic, flipping it onto the bar counter. It landed with a soft clink. A Navy commander's challenge coin. The laughter died instantly. Commander Alexandra Reed. United States Navy. Special Operations. She leaned forward slightly. You boys still want to take this outside? A tense silence filled the room. Some of the older men clearly recognized what that coin meant. Special operations in the Navy wasn't something to joke about. But the younger bikers either didn't understand or didn't care. The bearded man clenched his fists. Lady, I don't give a damn if you're the Queen of England. You're still in our bar, and you're still, crack. Before he could finish, Alexandra's palm shot out, slamming into his nose with brutal precision. He stumbled backward, blood streaming down his face. The bald man lunged at her, but she twisted to the side, hooking his arm and flipping him over onto the bar floor with a sickening thud. Another biker charged, pulling a knife. Big mistake. Alexandra sidestepped him, grabbed his wrist, and twisted it with expert precision. The knife clattered to the ground, and before he could react, she drove her elbow into his temple. He dropped like a sack of bricks. The remaining bikers hesitated, suddenly unsure. I'd rethink your life choices, Alexandra said coolly, adjusting her stance. The bearded man, still clutching his bleeding nose, scrambled to his feet and backed away. His pride was wounded, but not enough to keep fighting. Screw this, he muttered, shoving past his buddies toward the door. The others quickly followed, one dragging the unconscious man behind him. The bartender let out a long breath. Well, damn. Alexandra picked up her challenge coin and slipped it back into her pocket. Then, she downed the rest of her whiskey in one smooth motion. Another round? The bartender asked, clearly impressed. She smirked. Why not? Outside, the sound of motorcycles revving faded into the distance. The Hellhounds had learned a valuable lesson that night. Some battles just weren't worth fighting, and some people were definitely the wrong ones to mess with. Here's the next part of the story. Things aren't over just yet. Alexandra sat at the bar, enjoying the burn of her second whiskey. The bartender, a wiry old man named Gus, whistled as he wiped the counter. Lady, I've been running this bar for 20 years. Never seen a group of hellhounds back down that fast. He chuckled. That was something else. Alexandra smirked, rolling the empty glass between her fingers. They're just bullies. And bullies don't like getting hit back. Gus chuckled, but then hesitated. He glanced at the door before lowering his voice. Thing is, you might have embarrassed him, but those guys? They don't take kindly to being made fools of, especially in their own territory. Alexandra lifted an eyebrow. Their territory? Gus nodded grimly. Yeah. Their clubhouse is about 10 miles down the road. Word'll get back to their leader, Big Roy. And Big Roy? He ain't the forgiving type. Alexandra sighed and glanced at her watch. She had been on leave for the past week, enjoying a quiet road trip, but trouble always seemed to find her. You got a back door out of here? She asked casually. Gus shook his head. Nah, but even if you did slip out, they'd find you. They run this stretch of road. Only way out is through. Alexandra ran a hand through her auburn hair, then let out a short laugh. Let him come, then. Gus whistled. Lady, you got a death wish or something? But Alexandra wasn't worried. She had seen far worse than a pack of angry bikers. Trouble comes knocking about 30 minutes later. The distant rumble of motorcycles grew louder, shaking the walls of the rusty wheel. Gus glanced out the window and cursed under his breath. Damn it. They brought the whole damn pack. Outside, nearly a dozen bikes pulled up, their riders cutting the engines in unison. At the center of the group was Big Roy, a massive man built like a grizzly bear, wearing a sleeveless leather vest that barely contained his thick arms. His beard was long and gray, his eyes cold as steel. He stepped off his bike, cracking his knuckles. The other bikers, including the ones Alexandra had taken down earlier, followed behind him, still nursing their bruises. The bar door swung open violently. Roy stepped inside, his boots thudding against the floor. His eyes locked onto Alexandra immediately. You, he growled. Alexandra took another slow sip of her whiskey before setting the glass down. Me, she replied coolly. Roy exhaled sharply, nostrils flaring. You embarrass my men. She shrugged. They picked a fight. They lost. That's not my problem. A few of the bikers muttered angrily, but Roy held up a hand, silencing them. His gaze hardened. You're military, aren't you? Alexandra didn't answer. Roy chuckled darkly. Yeah, I can tell. You don't flinch, don't get rattled. That means you know what you're doing, Dot. He stepped closer. But see, lady, around here, respect is everything. You come into my bar, humiliate my men, and think you can just sit there like nothing happened. She met his gaze, unblinking. Sounds like a you problem, not a me problem. A few of the bikers bristled, but Roy grinned, shaking his head. Damn shame. If you weren't so full of yourself, I'd offer you a place in my crew. His expression darkened. But now? Now I gotta make an example out of you. Alexandra sighed and stood up slowly. You sure you want to do this? Roy's grin vanished. Oh, I'm sure. He swung. But Alexandra was faster. She ducked under the punch, twisted to the side, and drove a precise strike into his ribs. Roy staggered back, surprised by the speed and power behind her attack. But he recovered quickly, lunging again. This time, she grabbed his wrist, pivoted, and used his own momentum to send him crashing into a table. The wooden surface shattered under his weight. The bar erupted into chaos. Bikers charged at her from all directions, but Alexandra was a force of nature. She dodged a wild swing, countered with a brutal knee to someone's gut, then spun and kicked another man in the chest. The sound of fists meeting flesh, groans of pain, and breaking furniture filled the air. Roy struggled to his feet, rage burning in his eyes. He pulled a knife from his belt. Alexandra narrowed her eyes. Really? A knife? Roy roared and slashed at her. She sidestepped effortlessly, grabbed his wrist, and twisted. The knife clattered to the floor. With a swift motion, she swept his legs out from under him and dropped him onto his back with a heavy thud. He gasped, winded. The remaining bikers hesitated. Alexandra pressed her boot against Roy's chest, pinning him. Still want to make an example out of me? She asked, her voice calm but firm. Roy coughed, staring up at her, realization dawning in his eyes. He had underestimated her. Badly. Damn, he muttered. The bar fell silent. Slowly, Alexandra removed her boot and stepped back. Roy groaned and sat up, rubbing his ribs. Then, unexpectedly, he started laughing. All right, lady. He grunted, shaking his head. You win. The bikers exchanged confused glances. Roy wiped the blood from his mouth and got to his feet. He looked at Alexandra for a long moment before nodding. I don't like losing, but I respect someone who can back up their talk. Alexandra crossed her arms. So this is over? Roy chuckled. Yeah, this is over. He turned to his men. Nobody touches her. The bikers murmured in agreement. The tension in the bar faded, replaced by something else, respect. Roy looked back at Alexandra. If you ever need a crew, you know where to find us. Alexandra smirked. I'll keep that in mind. With that, Roy and his men walked out, their boots echoing against the wooden floor. As the sound of motorcycles roared back to life and faded into the night, Gus let out a breath he'd been holding. Damn, lady, he muttered. You just made yourself a legend around here. Alexandra sat back down and signaled for another drink. Yeah, she said with a smirk. I do that sometimes. A week had passed since Alexandra Reed single-handedly put the hellhounds in their place. She had expected trouble to follow her, but surprisingly, things had been quiet. Almost too quiet. She was back on the road, heading west, when her bike started acting up. The engine sputtered, coughed, and then died completely. Damn it, she muttered, pulling over onto the shoulder of the highway. She kicked the stand down and swung her leg over, inspecting the engine. That's when she heard it. The low, guttural growl of motorcycle engines. She glanced in the rearview mirror of her bike. 3 bikes. No, 5. No, 7. A chill of adrenaline surged through her veins as she recognized the insignia on their jackets. The Black Reapers. Unlike the Hellhounds, these guys weren't just a rough biker gang. They were full-blown criminals, gun runners, drug traffickers, the kind of men who didn't leave loose ends. And right now, they were rolling up on her like a pack of wolves that had found fresh prey. The lead rider, a tall man with a snake tattoo slithering up his neck, grinned as he slowed to a stop. Well, he said, swinging a leg off his bike. You're the lady who embarrassed the Hellhounds, aren't you? Alexandra said nothing, her eyes scanning the group. 7 men, all armed. Not great odds, even for her. The man took a step closer. Thing is, sweetheart, those boys might have let it go, but we ain't as forgiving. He cracked his knuckles. Big Roy doesn't run this road. We do. And now we got a score to settle. Alexandra clenched her fists. She could take a few of them, but 7? Even she had limits. That's when another sound cut through the air. A deep, thundering roar of engines. Not just one. Not just 2. A whole pack. The Black Reapers turned their heads as a group of riders came storming down the highway like a tidal wave of chrome and leather. The Hellhounds. At the front of the pack was Big Roy, his beard whipping in the wind as he revved his bike and skidded to a halt beside Alexandra. He looked at her, then at the Black Reapers. Didn't think we'd just let you go without a proper send-off, did ya, Commander? He said with a grin. Alexandra smirked. Nice timing. Roy cracked his neck. Heard some Reapers were sniffing around. Figured we'd crash the party. The Black Reapers' leader scowled. This ain't your fight, Roy. Roy's grin widened. Yeah, see, it is. 'Cause the lady here? She earned our respect. And you? His expression turned ice cold. You're just in our way. The tension snapped like a rubber band. Fists flew. Engines roared. The fight was fast, brutal, and merciless. Alexandra fought like a whirlwind, dodging a wild swing and countering with a knee to the ribs. Roy sent one Reaper sprawling with a single, crushing punch. The bar brawlers from before? They were warriors now, taking on the Reapers with savage efficiency. Within minutes, the Black Reapers were beaten, their bikes left smoking, their bodies groaning on the pavement. Their leader, clutching his ribs, glared at Roy. This ain't over, he spat. Roy laughed. Yeah, it is. Get on your bikes and ride before I change my mind. The Reapers didn't argue. One by one, they limped to their bikes and peeled off, defeated. Alexandra turned to Roy. Didn't think you were the cavalry type. He shrugged. Let's just say. We take care of our own. She smirked, throwing a leg over her bike. Guess I owe you one. Roy grinned. Just buy me a drink next time you're in town. With that, she kicked her bike to life, and together, she and the Hellhounds roared off into the horizon. Because some fights? They were worth finishing together.